Ugandan pop star turned MP Bobi Wine briefs the media on the situation in Uganda at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. We'll have a live update. Comic performers visit hospitals in South Africa and tap into the healing power of happiness. And a military court in South Sudan sentences 10 soldiers to jail terms for rape and murder. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with the latest political developments in Uganda. A group of lawmakers have petitioned the Supreme Court seeking to reverse a lower court decision that upheld a constitutional amendment allowing long-term President Yoweri Museveni to seek re-election. Parliament, which is controlled by the ruling party, voted overwhelmingly last December to ditch the age limit of 75 for presidential candidates, which would have ruled out the 73-year-old Museveni from running in the 2021 presidential election. Ladislaus Rwakafuzi, a lawyer for 6 legislators opposed to the amendment, says the group filed the appeal against the ruling on Tuesday because they were dissatisfied with the verdict and they didn't think the court evaluated the evidence properly. Rwakafuzi says grounds for an appeal stemmed from some lawmakers allegedly being bribed before the vote and that insufficient public consultations had been held. The Ugandan government has rejected those claims. Popular musician turned legislator Bobi Wine has been battling Museveni's administration and spoke out today in the U.S. Capitol.
I must go back home. Uganda is my home. I don't have another home. I'm Ugandan, and I'm going back home. Yeah. It is a habit for the Ugandan authorities to torture people and then outrightly come out and lie. Like I said, I'm not the first person to be tortured. We've seen people that have been brutalized even worse than I have been. You've seen the Muslim clerics that have been tortured. We've seen women that have been tortured. Even right now, we have people that are rotting in hospitals out of torture. And like I said, it's a privilege for me to be able to even access specialized treatment. And the least I can do is to speak out for those hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been brutalized. I cannot continuously, like Bob said, subject myself to indignities. I cannot undress myself, but just a little that you can see of my body is probably signal to the torture that I went through.
One of our viewers, Paul Ndiho, attended Bobi Wine's briefing at the National Press Club here in Washington, D.C. today, and now joins me to tell us more about it. Hello, Paul.
Hello, yes, sir.
Now, it's good to have you with us. Now, Bobi kind of obviously was tortured, and he says he still wants to go back home. Did he talk about whether he's concerned really about his life? His life has been threatened in Uganda. Why would he want to be there?
You are right on the money. He talked about his life being at risk right now, but he said, look, at the end of the day, Uganda is my home. I have to go back. He has nothing to do here. That's what he said. And from what he said, he would like to go like yesterday. Because unfortunately he's still undergoing treatment. Until that treatment is done, that's when he can get on the flight back. But he's prepared to go all the way.
And about his family back home, is everybody safe?
As of today, one of his personal assistants, an assistant to the wife, a person who works with the wife, was kidnapped. That's according to Bobi Wine, and arrested by security forces. They don't know why they took that person, and other family members apparently have been rounded up in the lead up to this press conference.
Now, Bobi Wine says that's a ruthless kind of regime that tortures people. What does he think, from what he said, has to be done, has to happen in Uganda in order for things to change?
Well, he talked about a fundamental change, a change that doesn't just involve Bobi Wine, doesn't involve Kizza Besigye, doesn't involve all the other opposition leaders, but a combination of all young people in Uganda who want to see change take root in Uganda.
Mm-hmm. Now, he's an artist, and we do sometimes think of others in the past who have used that platform to kind of fight for social change. Who does he tend to mirror at this time?
That's a very good question, Vincent. I think he reminds me of a younger Hugh Masekela in South Africa, a younger Milia Makeba in South Africa during the apartheid era. He also reminds me of Fela Kuti in Nigeria. I'm not trying to elevate him to that level, but he has the potential to get there. Reason being that his music resonates with a lot of young people.
And very quickly, how popular would you say Bobi Wine is in Uganda?
Hugely, hugely popular.
Yeah.
And from what I've been reading or seeing, the more they try to attack him, the more they try to arrest him, it makes him even more popular.
Indeed, and that's why he is such a threat to the status quo. Paul, thank you very much for joining us and sharing this with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's VOA's Paul Neo reporting. Well, the Democratic Republic of Congo is struggling in its fight to control an Ebola outbreak. Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu joins us now with the latest details. Lino.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has recorded the first death from Ebola in the eastern trading hub of Butembo, a city of nearly 1 million people. The Ebola epidemic is believed to have killed 85 people since July and infected another 39. Most have been in villages, but about 20 cases have been in Beni, a city of several 100,000 people with close links to Uganda. Health officials say they are making progress in slowing the virus's spread with experimental vaccines and treatments. But they cannot be sure the situation is under control due to difficulties accessing some areas. For more insight on the Ebola epidemic in the DRC, joining us live via Skype from Walkersville, Maryland, in the eastern U.S., is Dr. Malonga Myatudila. He is Senior Public Health Specialist and International Consultant. Dr. Myatudila was part of the team who first discovered the Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Dr. Malonga, it is good to have you back on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me again.
You are working closely with health authorities in North Kivu province. What are they telling you in terms of the latest developments?
As of yesterday, the number of cases has been, the total number is 127. Out of them, 96 confirmed, meaning that they could do a biological test to make sure that it's Ebola. And then 87 people have died from Ebola, 56 of them confirmed cases of Ebola.
Okay, and these are numbers coming straight from health authorities on the ground. Now, let's talk about this. The country has gone through several Ebola outbreaks. What is particular about this outbreak, given that it seems to take longer to contain?
This is the 10th outbreak since 1976. Now, the North Kivu is currently in a very special situation. As you know, this is the region where you have coltan, meaning that we have a lot of armed groups that are trying to make it easy for other people to get access to that mineral. Because of that, it's very difficult from the central government, even from the provincial government, to have a control on all the health zones. So that is making the control a little bit difficult. As you know, the first cases were diagnosed in May. You can see how long it took the central government, even the provincial government, to start fighting against Ebola. So this is the first time that we have that kind of delay because of the situation, as I explained, that it's a very, it's a conflict.
Yeah. So quickly, before we wrap, what are some of the strategies then, given that there are rebel groups in this area, what are they doing to be able to access the population?
They are trying to go through the same recipe that was developed a long time ago, meaning to put the communities in the driver's seat. But because of the suspicion among groups, it has taken longer than usual to come to that strategy. But now I think they've made some good strides. For the time being, the resistance at the community level is decreasing. So this is why now they can say that they are starting to get control of the
situation. Okay, Dr. Malonga, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that was Dr. Malonga Myatudila. He is Senior Public Health Specialist and International Consultant. Now, a research review suggests about 1 in 8 essential medicines in low and middle income countries may be fake or contain dangerous mixes of ingredients that put patients' lives at risk. Researchers examined data from more than 350 previous studies, which tested over 400,000 drug samples. 1/3 of the studies were done in Asia, where about 14% of medicines were tested and found that they were counterfeit or otherwise unsafe. Almost 1 in 5 medications tested in Africa were fake or otherwise potentially unsafe, according to a researcher report in the Journal of American Medicine. Antibiotics and antimalarials were the most tested drugs in the analysis. Overall, about 19% of antimalarials and 12% of antibiotics were falsified or otherwise unsafe. Now, aspiring medical clowns are entertaining patients, bringing laughter and a welcome distraction through the corridors of hospitals in South Africa. This group of clowns is spending the afternoon with children at a hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa. They aim to entertain patients and lift their spirits.
Very nice name for the school.
When the clowns are here, they start playing around, like forgetting that they have pains and everything. I like that.
Pa, pa, pa. Pa, pa.
They are not your usual clowns. This group has visited various hospitals in the city as part of training in medical clowning, a skill that promotes use of laughter as part of therapy for patients. They are attending a 10-day workshop by Dr. Amnon Raviv, who works as a clown doctor in Israel.
We give here in the training the fundamentals of the work. Then they should take it, you know, and because the clowns here are from South Africa, they will know how to adapt it, you know, better way to the environment of the hospitals here. But here in the training, we have 10 days training. It's just the fundamentals that are everywhere.
We are sick, not him. Look at you.
Dr. Ravi has traveled to South Africa to help a newly launched NGO. Dr. Heartbeat set up its medical clown training program.
I'm setting out the profession of medical clowning because I believe South Africa has a multitude of talent in this country. We have a lot of unemployed youth who we are targeting to train. And we're hoping to create job opportunities for those people who are unemployed.
We are sick, not him. Look at you.
The performers learn various tricks, games, songs, jokes, and how to use props and makeup to present funny episodes to patients. There is very little research into the connection between laughter and disease remission, but some clinical studies have shown that it raises oxygen levels in the lungs, lowers blood pressure, and reduces the stress hormone cortisol. Laughter is generally seen as a natural anti-stress mechanism.
I see myself using medical clowning to just lighten up the process for the sick and those medical staff, not just the sick, but the medical staff, because they need a lot to laugh about, because there's always this tension, they're always working hard.
We are going there to make them feel better, not going to heal them like to be in a good state and all that. We know that the pain is there. We're not going to take the pain there, but we are going to remove their mind there, where they are, knowing that, oh, we're stuck in this. So it's going to be a good thing.
Clown care has long been used at medical centers in Israel, the United States, Canada, Europe, and Australia, usually in children's hospitals. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Now, several African nations are taking steps to improve access to sanitary products for both women and girls. In Kenya, two sisters are using technology to make that a reality. In an earlier report, Africa 54's Paul Ndiho caught up with the duo.
Kenyan sisters Faith and Linda Kimel are making their mark in the innovation and technology sphere. The award-winning automated tailored machine, or Dial-A-Pad, dispenses sanitary napkins at a low cost and is generating a buzz. The sisters hope their innovation could be an industry game changer.
Dial-A-Pad utilizes both software and hardware technology to address menstrual health issues and sexual reproductive health.
Faith says that Dial-A-Pad was born from a 2-year interaction with poor students faced with the dire situation of lack of menstrual hygiene in different parts of the country.
From our interactions, we've seen a lot of girls and women don't have a clue about what is normal, what is not normal. They're all, in matters pertaining to sexual, reproductive health and menstrual hygiene, there's a complete lack of knowledge.
The Kenyan government recently announced that it would begin distributing free sanitary pads to every one of its 4.2 million girls in its public schools.
Our president signed the bill of free pads into law, so it's in effect right now.
Through the initiative, the government is expected to hand out 140 million sanitary pads to schools. Linda Kimel, co-founder of Dial-A-Pad, explains how the automated tailored machine works for sanitary pads.
How it works is really simple. It gives you access to sanitary pads in a cheap, affordable, yet humane and dignified manner. It prompts you to start. You press the star button. It asks you which kind of pad do you want, normal or maxi. I choose normal. I want a normal kind of pad. And then it tells you each pad is 10 shillings. How many do you want? I have 10 shillings coin only, so I choose one. So after that, I'm supposed to pay 10 shillings. So I've paid, and I wait for the pad at the base of the dispenser.
A study done by Zana Africa, a Kenyan non-profit organization, says nearly 1 million girls miss school because they lack access to menstrual hygiene supplies. Linda Kimel says this technology is going to help millions of girls stay in schools.
Normally, girls miss school because of periods. Now, when you provide them with this, you'll have to go to school normally because your periods are catered for.
Faith and Linda have also successfully competed at different levels, including the Lansdowne Challenge by KCB, where they received $4,000. They used those funds to create an app where their clients get to select and buy sanitary napkins or tampons using the mobile money payment M-Pesa. Tech analysts said the concept of Dial-A-Pad is not new, but what the sisters have done is to take it to rural schools and public places and make it easily accessible. As the sisters expand their business enterprise, they say their eyes are set on other innovative and cutting-edge solutions.
So it prompts you to start, you press the
Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
So which pad do you want?
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, 10 South Sudanese soldiers are sentenced by a military court. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
Morocco, people smugglers have been fleeing to the outskirts of Tanger since authorities launched an operation targeting them and the migrants they bring in. In Egypt, a new twin-tube road tunnel is under construction in Ismaila to stretch under the Suez Canal. The Congolese Electoral Commission plans to utilize a new voting machine that has caused controversy 4 months prior to the presidential election. In South Sudan, troops have been sentenced to jail for murder and rape during a 2016 hotel raid. Finally, in Nigeria, Anheuser-Busch, the world's largest brewery, has opened a $250 million facility in Saguma. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.
Crimes against humanity escalated in Burundi in 2017 and 2018, according to a United Nations Human Rights report revealed on Wednesday. The crimes were often whipped up by rhetoric from top officials, including President Pierre Nkurunziza. Burundian officials dismissed the report as lies. Burundi has tried and failed to stop the UN Commission of Inquiry in Burundi, set up by the UN Human Rights Council in 2016, and refuses to cooperate with the commission. The commission said last year that officials at the highest level were responsible for crimes against humanity. The commission's latest report says there were reasonable grounds to believe crimes against humanity were continuing, including murder, torture, and rape. Burundi's Human Rights Minister Martin Nivyabandi says the report was misleading and insulting. Now, for more on the situation in Burundi, I'm joined live via Skype from United Kingdom, from Geneva, in fact, by Professor Francois Hampson, who is a member of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry in Burundi. Good evening, Professor Hampson.
Good evening.
Now, your commission says there are crimes that are being committed in Burundi, but the government says that is fictitious and that you're serving the interests of Western nations. What do you base your report on?
The Commission's work, like that of other commissions of inquiry, is completely independent and impartial. What we do is to interview people. I mean, we prefer it if we have access to the territory, but there is still plenty of possibility of interviewing witnesses, victims, people connected with the authorities in power. And a lot of the interviews happen in countries around Burundi. But it is also possible, given the means of modern technology, to interview people who are still in Burundi.
Now, are these tortures clearly sanctioned by the government, or do they say it's more committed by supporters of this system just because they perceive certain people to be enemies of the state?
The torture happens to people who either are or are perceived to be enemies of the state, but it's not just the work of lone mavericks. It's sufficiently systematic and it's carried out by state agents, so one is in a position to say that the state must know of what's going on in its name.
Now, what are your recommendations? What ought to be done to first stop what's going on and also to hold the country or the government accountable?
Well, the first recommendation, obviously, is that all parties involved in any form of human rights violation or abuses should stop at once. A problem that has existed for a very long time in Burundi is the problem of impunity. In fact, it was something addressed in the Arusha Accords, but the authorities haven't implemented those recommendations fully. And there's a dire need to address the issue of impunity, because otherwise there's a real risk of continuing cycles of violations of human rights law if nobody's ever held to account. And another recommendation on the part of the Commission of Inquiry is that our mandate should be renewed for a further year, because in the run-up to elections in 2020, there's a real concern that the current situation could get even worse.
So here you're talking about maybe referring Burundi to the Security Council, or perhaps recommending things like sanctions?
The situation in Burundi has already been before the Security Council for some years. In fact, only about 2 weeks ago, the Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution in which they expressed their concern at the prevalence of continuing human rights violations there. So the Security Council is already engaged.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Professor Hampson. And in fact, you're in the UK. I spoke to you yesterday when you were in Geneva. That's Professor Francois Hampson, who's a member of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry in Burundi. Now, a South Sudanese military court on Thursday sentenced 10 soldiers to prison for the rape of foreign aid workers and the murder of a journalist in a brutal attack in a Juba hotel. The court also ordered the government to pay compensation to the victims. The attack, one of the worst on aid workers in South Sudan's civil war, took place on July the 11th, 2016, as President Salva Kiir's troops won a 3-day battle in the capital over forces loyal to opposition leader Riek Machar. The court case was widely seen as a test of will by the government of Kiir to bring accountability in the military that has long drawn accusations of widespread rights violations and a culture of impunity. A lawyer for the 5 rape victims says the verdict was not harsh enough, while rights group Amnesty International called it a first step towards fighting impunity in the war-torn country. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. The London Design Biennale is playing host to 40 countries, cities and territories, wrestling with the theme emotional states. Greece submitted a mind-bending wall that flexes, morphs and breathes around visitors as they walk through the design. Disobedience is made from recycled plastic. Meanwhile, a New York Design Museum submitted Face Values, which includes 2 interactive pieces that explore the scope and limits of what technology can learn about you from your face, while a New York-Hong Kong collaboration produced Sensorio Estates, which encourages visitors to scratch and sniff the wallpaper. The different scents intended to tell the story of Hong Kong's history from opium to egg tarts. Well, and finally, virtual reality is helping tourists see a different side of the ancient city of Jerusalem, allowing them to walk around buildings that would have been there thousands of years ago. The VR guide, Step Into History, lets people walk around and experience ancient buildings as if they were still there. It was created by Australian startup Lithodomos VR in conjunction with archaeologists from the Israeli Antiquities Authority. When someone puts on the VR headset, they see 360-degree simulations of how Jerusalem's citadel, places, streets and temples would have looked during the city's heyday under King Herod in the 1st century BC and later during the life of Jesus in the following century. And that's what's trending, and that's our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A corner is basically an angle where 2 sides meet.
Boxed in a corner.
Let's find out why these 2 are talking about corners.
What's wrong? You look worried.
My friend Nico quit his job, had a baby, and bought a new house, all at the same time.
How's that going?
Not good. He's out.